In the field of human relations, or HR as it has come to be known, at the bottom rung there is slavery. Slavery exists when one of the humans owns the other. The other is property, like a car or a hairbrush. The other is not human. He is what is known as chattel. There is some incentive for the one human to take good care of their property so they can get the most out of them. Damaged goods are not very productive and can be costly to maintain. The human who owns the slave is called a master. A wise master takes good care of his slaves, but does not think of them as being human. As it happens, there is a measure of equity buried in this institution because, as the slave is not a human being, neither is the master, no matter how wise he may be. Next on the list of human relations, we have the serf. I had to look this one up. The dictionary said that the word derives from the Latin servus, which meant slave. A serf is a member of a service feudal class bound to the soil and subject to the will of his lord. I think in this arrangement that the serf is a human, if not a very fortunate one. Technically, I don't think the Lord owned the serf, but the effect was about the same because the serf owned nothing. Arguably, he did own himself. He was not, strictly speaking, the property of the Lord. He was a human being, but he had no rights, as we like to think of them, except the retention of his soul, if he thought he had a soul. Just as it would be a crime to steal something that belonged to the Lord, or rustle some of his livestock, so you could not abuse one of the Lord's serfs without incurring the Lord's displeasure. The Lord was like a mob boss. His power was absolute for as long as he could exert it. The serfs existed under his protection and were born to work, nothing else. If you beat up or killed a serf, your real crime was insulting the Lord. You left the serf alone not because you respected him, but because you feared the Lord. Next on the list is the indentured servant. I had to look this one up too. I thought it might be a relation where the one human owns the other's teeth. If he needed some gold or enamel, he just wanted to yank a tooth to show that he could do it, he had that right. The eventual fate, obviously, of all indentured servants was to be toothless. That isn't it exactly. The indentured servant is very near to, right above, independence in the dictionary, but it has an altogether different meaning, a far, far cry from freedom. An indentured servant is a person who signs or is bound by indenture to work for another for a specified period of time. An indenture is a contract binding one person to work for another. The servant or apprentice may as well have signed over his teeth. While he exists under the terms of the contract, he has little or no say about the direction of his life. He does what he's told to do. He is a person, but he has forfeited what we think of as his rights, his freedom, most likely to repay a debt or to learn a trade or to exchange everything he has for food and shelter. Next up is the servant. This is one who performs duties in the home or person of a master or employer. So it would depend on the prevailing economic system as to whether the person at the top is a master, a lord, or an employer, and the other is a butler, a maid, or an employee. If the social system is strictly defined by class, the servant is human, but less so. If the society is defined by money, and there is therefore slightly more fluid, the employee is temporarily subservient, bound by contract to do as he is told. In our society, we prefer to think of ourselves as employees, but we are servants nonetheless. Finally, there is the public servant, and you might almost call this the servant's revenge, because this one flips everything upside down. The public servant does nothing and is beholden to no one save popularity. As long as they can muster enough votes, a pretty trick, they are free to do as they please. They act as if the society and the well-being of the people are in their control. They are running the country in the same way that a meteorologist fabricates the weather. Their business, such as it is important. They are accorded dignity and respect. They amass personal fortunes. Public service, aka the gravy train, is not for everyone. It requires balancing sincerity with a great deal of pretense. A public servant has to surrender their autonomy. For this small sacrifice, a world of ease and privilege opens. Lawyers and salesmen often make excellent public servants. There is also military service, in which you offer to trade your life for the good of the country, as that good is defined by the public servants, whose masters are, theoretically, the people, in reality, the ones who own the most and therefore have the most to lose. This servant is called a soldier, and a good soldier does what he is ordered to do, giving no thought to his personal choices. The more you investigate the field of human relations, the more difficult it becomes to separate the various conditions. Often it seems to be a matter of semantics, and depends on whether the extant terms of life are harsh or relatively mild. In all conditions, however, service is required. Those who wish to declare non serviam are either excluded from the society and its benefits or terminated. The game of chess provides us with a brief social survey. The game revolves around the king and to a slightly lesser extent the queen. The rooks or lords and bishops and knights follow in procession and importance. The rest are pawns. This has been a short review of the pawns.